I started drinking iced cold brew coffee about 10 years ago. And since then, I drink it pretty much regularly, especially during the warm weather months. I love iced cold brew coffee because it's a lot smoother and less bitter than regular iced coffee, which I also love. But I also started making iced cold brew coffee concentrate at home, and I'm going to show you how to make that. And it all comes down to the beans. So we're going to start with medium roast coffee beans. And it's important to use medium roast coffee beans because you can really taste the true flavors of the coffee bean. It's also very important to grind your own coffee beans right before you make your concentrate so that it's fresh. I'm going to start by weighing out 7 ounces of the medium roast coffee beans. If you don't have a scale, all you have to do is measure out 2.5 cups. All right. So now that we have our beans, now we're going to grind them. So you have 2 different grinding options. You have a blade grinder and you have a burr grinder. A blade grinder is designed where it has one hopper, and inside of it, it has a blade. It's just like a little mini food processor. And what you do is you put your coffee beans in there, put the lid on it, and you press the button, and the blade just really chops up those coffee beans. And you have to shake it a couple times, and it does generate heat, and it does take away a little bit of the flavor of the coffee. So a more gentle approach is using a burr grinder. So a burr grinder has 3 different parts to it. It has a hopper where you put your beans into, and then inside it has a chamber where it grinds up the coffee beans as the coffee beans go through it. It's kind of like how a pepper grinder works. And then as it grinds, it falls right into this little removable container. So I have it set at coarse. When it comes to iced cold brew coffee, we want coarse. All I'm gonna do is pour the coffee beans right into the hopper. Before I start to grind my coffee beans, as I've made this over the years, I've discovered that static is created as it grinds. So when you open up the chamber, little coffee bits go flying everywhere. So I found a little trick to avoid that from happening. And that's basically taking a paper towel, dipping it into water, and then just dripping maybe about 10 drops of water over it. And then I stir that in with the base of a spoon. And what this does is the water really just kind of keeps the beans from flying around. I used to make a mess every time I made this until I figured out how to fix it. All right, so now you put the lid on and we're ready to grind. Okay, if there's static, we're gonna find out. And there's no static, so it's just perfect thing. It's a game changer. Okay, so here's our French press. And I'm just going to add this coffee into the French press and grind the rest of the coffee beans. I wish you could smell this right now. The smell of fresh ground coffee, it just wakes you right up. Okay, so that's our coffee. It's waiting for us in our French press. So let's go on to our second ingredient, which is water. So when making cold brew concentrate, it's really important that you use good filtered water, and that will allow the true flavors of the coffee bean to come through. You can taste all the little nuances and the caramel notes and the coffee notes and the chocolate notes. So we want 2.5 cups of water. What this comes down to is basically a ratio of 1 to 1. So 1 part coffee to 1 part water. We're using 2.5 cups of coffee. We're using 2.5 cups of water. I'm going to pour this water over the coffee grinds. If you have a larger French press, by all means, just increase the ratio accordingly. You can see it, all the coffee is kind of rising to the top. And so I'm going to use a chopstick. And what this chopstick is going to do, it's a very gentle method for stirring the water and the coffee together. So now I'm kind of making a ground coffee slurry. And it's really important that all the coffee grinds come in contact with water. All the flavors are going to come out of the coffee and into the water, which is what we want. And so I'm feeling pretty good about this. It's definitely loosened up, but just to be sure, I'm gonna let this sit for 10 minutes and I'm gonna come back and stir it one more time. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, and as you can see, a raft has formed. The coffee grinds have slowly risen and the water is settled. And so now I just wanna make sure that I give it one more stir. It's very important that the coffee grinds have full contact with the water. So I'm breaking up the raft and giving it another stir. I should mention that there's a lot of recipes out there that call for constant agitation, stirring it often. It's really not necessary. This is it. This is all that you have to do is just stir it this one last time. And now I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap. And this is where it's going to do its thing. It takes a little bit of time, but it's all hands off. So I'm gonna let this sit for about 24 hours, and you can let it sit from anywhere between 12 hours and 72 hours, whatever works best for you and your schedule. But I found that the 24-hour mark is the perfect mark for the extraction that I like. So I'm just gonna let this sit for 24 hours and we'll come back. It's been 24 hours and our coffee has steeped and it's ready to press. So I'm gonna remove the plastic wrap. It's good to give it a little quick, gentle stir, and that will help the wrap to kind of break up again, and the pressing will be a little bit easier. So now I'm gonna take my plunger and I'm gonna start pressing. This does take a little bit of muscle. You don't wanna put a ton of muscle into it because remember, you are pressing on a glass jar and you don't want it to break, which has happened. Okay, so now it's ready to strain. So over here, I have a fine mesh strainer and I put a coffee filter in it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour the coffee that I've pressed and I'm just gonna drain again through the coffee filter. And this step really is not 100% necessary, but what it does is it removes any extra kind of coffee sludge that I really don't want in my coffee. Some people like it, I don't really care for it, so I'm gonna strain it out. Ah, smells delicious. All right, smells amazing. I'm getting excited. Okay, so while that's starting to drain, I'm just gonna slide this over here. There's another step. So I have a large bowl and I have a triple layer of cheesecloth that I've lined it with. I wanna get every drop out of the coffee grinds that are still in this coffee press. So I'm just gonna transfer them to this setup, scrape them in. This is gold. I gather all the corners together. Make a little pouch. So I'm just gonna give it a couple of squeezes. And now I'm just gonna pour this right into the coffee filter as well. Okay, so now we're just gonna let this sit, and it takes about a couple of hours for all that coffee to go through the filter. And you can take a rubber spatula and help kind of move any silt and any sludge that is left behind so that the coffee can flow through a little bit faster. It's been a couple of hours and our coffee has fully gone through the filter. So as you can see, it's really strained out quite a bit of coffee grit. So I'm just gonna put this aside, and now we're ready to basically put this into a jar and refrigerate it. It keeps for about 1 week. What I like to do at this point is put it into individual servings. So I have a couple of jars. So I take my concentrate and I'm just gonna divide it up. A half a cup of concentrate is a full portion. This makes 2 portions. Now it's ready to put into the refrigerator and I have my individual portions ready to go. My cold brew has chilled and it is showtime. I have a half a cup of concentrate. Now I have cold filtered water. So I'm gonna measure out a half a cup. Again, you want to use really good water when you're making your cold brew, so you really want those coffee flavors to come through. The ratio here is 1:1, but if you like your cold brew stronger, you can use a little less water. If you like it a little bit weaker, you can use a little bit more water. So I like it at 1:1 ratio. So I'm gonna pour that into my cold brew. And this is kosher salt. I'm gonna add just a little pinch, and what this does is the salt really kind of rounds out the flavors of the coffee, and it also tames down any remaining bitterness that might be left over. So I'm just gonna swish that around to let that salt dissolve a little bit. Okay, so now it's ready to pour over my ice, but I wanna point out that I actually made my own ice cubes from filtered water. You start with filtered water, you should really have clean ice cubes as well. So all you do is just pour this right over those ice cubes. And when I drink cold brew, I like to add almond milk to it. So I'm gonna foam some. I don't do this all the time, but it really does make it a little extra special. The head of the foamer, you want to be at the bottom of the liquid. And then as it becomes greater in volume, you can slowly lift up the tip of the foamer, just so it's just under the surface of the foam. So this milk foamer is a really kind of fun gadget to have. I use it when making lattes or cappuccinos. You can foam milk or you can foam almond milk. All right, so now all you do is just hold a little foam back. I pour almond milk in. Look at that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful foam. All right, my ice cold brew is ready to drink. You can really taste the coffee. I'm getting like little chocolate bits and roasted coffee, but it's not too roasted, it's not too strong, it really doesn't dominate. And making the foam is really nice because you can actually taste the foam as it's sitting on top. You can also really enjoy it as it's mixed into the cold brew as well. But this is well worth every step that I've taken. The payoff is having a couple bottles in your fridge at all times so that you have this to pour and make yourself, and it's a nice treat. If you want to make the best iced cold brew concentrate, remember to use medium roast coffee that's coarsely ground, filtered water, and a 1-to-1 ratio of coffee to water. So from America's Test Kitchen at home, a spectacular recipe for cold brew coffee concentrate. It's such a treat.
Thanks for watching America's Test Kitchen. What'd you think?
Well, leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or you can just say hello.
You can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
I'll see you later.